Hi, welcome to Letters from New Zealand. I am John Jarvis. The surprise announcement by Jacinda Ardern that she was resigning immediately as Prime Minister and from Parliament later to avoid a costly by-election was met with nodding heads at one end of the spectrum and shaking heads at the other. Kiwis wondered why that such a vibrant leader would give the reason as having no gas left in the tank. She became leader of the Labour Party after a period of time when both National and Labour Party had a complete change of leadership every Tuesday and Thursday. Greek democracy had an answer to this problem. They would appoint a tyrant, a word that has more sinister connotation today, but back then he would take sole control, sort out the problems, then retire. A good example was when the Roman public were facing defeat by the Carthaginians. Scipio Africanus, at the end of a long campaign, defeated Hannibal outside the walls of Carthage, then demolished it so it could never rise again. He then retired to his vineyards. Jacinda is no tyrant, but she won an upcoming election with enough seats to form a coalition government under the slogan, "We can do it." She grew up in Warrensville and after graduating from the University of Waikato joined the Labour Party at 17. She worked as a researcher for Prime Minister Clark and later in the Labour Cabinet Office of the Prime Minister Tony Blair. She became the youngest female head of government in the world at the age of 37 and gave birth to a daughter in 2018, making her the second head of government to give birth in office after Benazir Bhutto. She gained further international popularity when, as an unmarried mother, took a baby into the United Nations debating chamber before giving her scheduled speech. New Zealand's first international terrorist attacks on 2 Christchurch mosques, where 51 people were killed and 49 injured. She wore hijab when she addressed the families of the distressed, reading out the names of those killed in Arabic and English, without notes or prompting, and she promised never to mention the name of the killer. A photo of her was taken hugging a member of the Christchurch Muslim community with the words peace in Arabic and English. It was projected onto the Burj Khalifa, and I hope I've got the pronunciation right, the world's tallest building. Ardern announced her government's intention to introduce stronger firearms regulations. Firearms had changed a lot since World War II and were no longer used over distances of around 250 metres. Other weapons were developed to do this. The resulting shorter-barreled assault rifles had larger magazines and a faster rate of fire. The AR-15 could use projectiles that keyholed or tumbled end over end when striking a human, causing horrific injuries and more sudden death. Long before the Christchurch shootings, my own collection included a Finnish velvet 7.62 caliber. It was a much superior manufactured version of the Russian AK-47. Having no practical use for owning such a weapon, I handed it into a Hastings gun shop. They sold it for me to a deer culler who operated from a helicopter, probably the only legitimate use of such a weapon in New Zealand. The legislation despite serious misgivings from genuine licence holders, passed all three readings quickly and were signed into law by the Governor-General. The handing in and buying back took much longer, and it was expensive, but in general it achieved what it set out to do. President Biden wants to reintroduce a similar law, but US commentators agree that it has zero chance of becoming law thanks to extensive lobbying by the American Rifle Association. The US liberal gun laws came about when, after the Civil War, soldiers were allowed to retain their rifles for hunting purposes, and overnight the reunited states became the most heavily armed population in the world. New gun regulations will become a much debated topic before New Zealand's elections later this year. Jacinda's next major challenge also came from overseas and caused the isolation, hospitalisation and death not seen since the 1919 Spanish flu pandemic, and it is still ongoing. COVID restrictions included closing New Zealand's borders, a level 4 system and a national lockdown. Jacinda asked New Zealanders to be kind. I cannot imagine any former Prime Minister being taken seriously, with the exception of perhaps Bill Rowling and Bill English. Unlike our friends across the ditch, Kiwis generally responded positively, with the exception of some breaking quarantine hotels or refusing to pay, and boaties coming clandestinely ashore on isolated beaches. Commentated praised her human and economic measures, and in May 1920 she became rated 59.5% as preferred Prime Minister, the highest score for any leader in the Reid Research's poll's history. The number of lives saved was estimated up to 80,000 by a team led by Shaba Hendi. It is interesting to note that the world's worst pandemic, the Black Death, claimed between 75 and 200 million people. DNA evidence suggests that the 13th century plague began in Wuhan, China, the suspected origin of COVID. It would take more than one letter to explain why Jacinda was so popular overseas, yet her rating dropped dramatically in New Zealand. Perhaps she felt that it would take a new leader to reverse Labour's fall in the polls. We should all wish her the best in her new positions. The post of trustee in the Earthshot Prize, elected by Prince William, he noted that Jacinda had a lifelong commitment to supporting sustainable and environmental solutions, and as a special envoy for the Christchurch Call, which she established after the mosque shootings to combat online extremist content. She deserves it. Thank you for watching. Please press the subscribe thingy below and keep in good health.